What's up guys, it's me, Tier List Mills here, coming at you with a brand new video. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down the Medal Ranked Season 4 tier list. A lot of you are asking me, what are the best heroes right now? If you are underneath the Masters rank, what characters should you be playing to climb as quickly as possible? And I'm going to give you the cliff notes for the best heroes to play and heroes that might give you a much harder time to climb with. Now, if you enjoy the content, do make a huge solid and smash that like and subscribe and let me know what video you want to see next, and let's jump into the content. Now, the first character that we got to talk about is Ana. And unfortunately, one change in particular kind of hurts Ana's carry potential. In the past, I gave Ana an S tier, very close to one of the best characters you can climb with, simply due to the fact that nade is one of the best ways to actually punish tanks. Sleep dart was very effective at stopping many different types of characters and ults, and Ana overall had a very high damage and heal output. Now, the sleep change makes it so a slept tank is going to wake up a lot faster, and one of the big ways that you could shut down tanks is just sleep them. If they kind of pushed you, then you could ping them like crazy, nade them, shoot them, whatever the case may be, and they would typically die. But now there's going to be less window for someone to react, and on your team especially, it's going to be really hard. At the lower ranks of play, most of the time it takes players a very long time to react to a sleep if they're going to do it at all, and now it's going to happen much less. Now, on the plus side though, a lot of times sleeps got woken up immediately, especially if you did it like in the team fight, like not off to the side or on a flank or something like that. You did it in the middle of the team fight, your team would wake up a target right away, and typically you would just want to like shoot and nade that target anyways, so it's not going to hurt you that much. But it's going to be pretty frustrating when there's like a flanking hog and you sleep that hog, and you're like, hey, there's a sleeping hog. You try to back away, the hog wakes up and kills you, and you're like, all right, well, if I would have had more time, I could have got away, or maybe one of my DPS would finally notice and come back in time, and they're just not going to react fast enough. Ana's still great, however, and I think that nades and being proactive with nades is typically better than trying to be less proactive with things like Suzu. So I'm putting Ana in the A tier. I think she's really good, still strong. It is unfortunate about that sleep change though. You're not really rewarded right now for hitting sleeps on a lot of tank characters, and it can be frustrating sometimes. Now, let's talk about Ashe. Ashe is just one of the best characters that you could be playing in most of the metal tiers. She's really strong, and I think that her only true weakness at the high tiers of play are specifically characters that can like outrange her, characters like Widowmaker, but especially when we're talking about the metal tiers, Widowmakers aren't going to be good enough to reliably shut you down. I think Hanzo might be your worst secondary matchup, and then from the tanking category, some dive tanks like Diva, but a lot of those Diva players are not going to be good enough to shut you down either. Ashe is strong. Bob is amazing. I think that she actually deserves S tier. That's just how good she is in the metal ranks. I think that she's phenomenal. She's going to win you a lot of games. The hardest thing about her is your ammo conservation, and that's going to be something where periodically when you're repositioning on Ashe, you should be trying to, you know, find a place, be effective, reposition, and reload while you're doing so, and try to keep your uptime as high as possible and not just wasting your time just standing in a place and just reloading all the time. Now, let's talk about Baptiste. Baptiste is an interesting character because Baptiste is definitely strong, right? He's definitely capable of carrying. Immortality field, exo boots, you can heal yourself, you have a lot of damage output, but he's not the easiest character to play. I think that you get a lot of value out of him just by existing. Large amounts of heals pumped into a tank like a Rhine. Rhine especially is very good in low ranks, and Baptiste enables him really well. Now, a couple of tips that I'll give you. Try to use your amp primarily for you, your amplification matrix. Most of the time, trying to coordinate that is going to be really hard. A lot of the time, players will not coordinate around you, and it's better to just use it to increase your own damage or your own heals instead. Now, also, Baptiste, you're going to need to be doing quite a bit of damage. Try not to just auto default to just a heal bot Bap. You're just leaving a ton of value on the table. If you're just going to heal bot, I think there's a lot of other characters that could do that just better. Still, he's a good character. He has a lot of great mobility. He's harder to punish than a character like Ana, but I think he's a little bit harder to get value out of than a character like Ana. I'm going to put him in the B tier. I think you could justify low A, but I'm going to put him in the B for metal ranks. Bastion. Now, there's like two sides of this coin. Bastion is really strong because players don't play against him properly. But you're also not going to get any support. You're not going to get any Suzus reliably. You're not going to get any DMs. You're not going to get any protection. So you're both a very strong character against the enemies, but also you're not going to be properly protected and utilized by your team. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword or a glass cannon, as you will. I think that if you're duoing as Bastion and you're playing with maybe a support or a tank that's going to help you get into the proper positions, help you get the most value out of the character, he can be like A, sometimes even take over a game, which is like S. But for the most part, I would say the average would probably be B. I think that's a fair assessment of the character. And yeah, I think that he can kind of fluctuate around depending on if you have that duo partner or not, or even more, trio, quad, whatever. Now, next up, let's talk about Brig. And Brig is going to be fairly weak in low ranks, in metal ranks. But I don't think that she's weak because she is like hard to play necessarily, even though I think she's not the easiest to play. I think that really a lot of players play her wrong. A lot of players play Brig like she is a pseudo tank, and that's just not how you play her. I kind of repeat this a lot. She's a bodyguard character. She's a passive character that gets a value off of enemies engages. She doesn't want to put herself in a bad position to trigger inspire. She just wants to exist and protect, Like a ball's never going to kill your Ana if you're sitting on her. A Genji's never going to kill your Ana if you're sitting on her. It's just never going to happen. Your Ana gets to stay alive perm. And oftentimes, players will literally int into y'all because they think they can kill the Ana and you just keep them alive. It's so freaking strong. And that means that she can carry, but oftentimes players just play Brig wrong. Now, I don't necessarily think that you're going to be able to hard carry games as much as some other characters, like, you know, run it down. But I do think that Brig is pretty underrated for low ranks of play. Now, if I'm talking about the average skill of someone that's playing Brig, I think that a lot of people misevaluate her. So I'm putting her in C tier, but that doesn't mean you can't climb with her. I just think that a lot of people are misevaluating what she's capable of. She's not as intuitive to play. You think, oh, I have this extra armor, oh, I have this shield, oh, I have an ult that I can rally in and bash things. I'm just supposed to W key. And that's why a lot of people in the lower ranks of the metal tiers think that Brig is bad. They think that Brig is not playable or not good or worse than she was before, whatever the case may be. There's a lot of things that people say, and some of that is true. Some amount of that is true, but Brig is still a character that could definitely climb you really easy out of the metal ranks if you incorporate the proper strategy that doesn't like line up with what you think the character should be doing. If you do incorporate those strategies, she's probably like high B, okay? But I'm putting her in the C. Cassidy. Cassidy did get nerfed. He's going to be less forgiving than before. He still isn't that forgiving for his position. But if we think about Cassidy, the big value that you get out of this character is that you get a large amount of burst damage, which the reactions, the heal reactions are going to be a bit slower, which is going to kind of help you out. Another part about Cassidy that's important is nade. Even though it doesn't like do as much damage as before, it does a ton of freaking damage. Still super strong. I think he's not as strong as he was before. You were allowed like a lot of leeway because you had extra health, but he still does a ton of damage. Grenade still does a ton of damage. He still plays really well with the way that the game is played in the lower ranks around Rhines and Brawls and things like that. I'm putting him in the bottom of A tier. I think he's still a great character to play in the metal ranks, but he's going to be a bit better if you're like duoing with a character like a Rhine, or if you're doing with a support that can kind of help you out a little bit. But he's not as good as Ashe though, because I think that Ashe has a better ultimate. Ashe has better mobility. And Ashe also has better sustained damage, trickle damage, instead of Cass that does have his grenade. I think his grenade is like the reason that he's still up here. Without grenade, he'd be much lower, but grenade is still like a busted freaking ability that's pretty easy to use. Doomfist. Now we all know that if you become a god at Doomfist, you can climb yourself to Grandmaster just like that. It's like a snap. I preach that a lot. Doomfist has a really high skill ceiling, but similar to Brig, a lot of people don't know how to play Doom, and this is a little bit different. It's not about like not knowing the proper way to play Doom. There is a certain amount of misinformation with Doom about like how to adapt against certain matchups, where I talked about extensively before. But the most important thing on Doom is that he's just hard to play. He's hard to learn. There's a lot of skill that is required. Mechanical skill when you're trying to hit your punches and hit your follow-up damage into melees. Mechanical skill learning how to use all of his abilities. Knowing how to play the cycles of Doom. Knowing how to play around your team and enemies. There's like so much to learn. So because of that, I'm putting him in the low tiers because he's not realistic to be a character that if you want a character to just pick up and play and get out of the metal rank, Doom is not that character. He's going to be a long grind to learn. But I promise you, if you learn this character, you're not just going to get to the metal rank or out of the metal rank. You're going to get to GM. You can hard carry with this character. Now past that, then there's a lot more to learn. I think GM 5 is kind of like something that you could probably hit fairly easily if you master this character, or not master, but get pretty competent in this character. But then past that, you have to learn a lot more advanced stuff and things like that. But I do think that for the majority of people, he's going to be a hard character to just pick up and learn and climb. Speaking of which, Diva. Diva's a character that she has all the tools to climb, Diva Bomb is going to get more value in the meta ranks. I think that the fact that she's flexible is really, really good. There is a big skill gap in Diva that is kind of, I think a lot of people kind of sleep on. People think that Diva's an easy character when she's not. You have to track really, really well. There's a lot of like fly-in combos that you have to learn, or there's one specific one that's kind of hard to hit and then track afterwards. Knowing what you're supposed to be doing at any given time requires a lot of game sense. Like, there's a lot of things to her that I think are difficult, and it's not as easy as just like playing Cass and shooting things and nading things that come close. It's like it requires more than that. Still a character that if you master, of course you can climb with this character, but almost not quite to the Doom level, but still it's a character that is, I think, hard to master, hard to learn, not easy to pick up, definitely capable of climbing you to Grandmaster and beyond. I rated her as one of the best characters in the meta, period. But for the metal ranks in particular, I think there's other tanks that you can play that will get you there easier. So I'm putting her kind of here. I think here is fine. Echo is going to be kind of hard. Echo's going to be hard. Echo's one of the hardest characters to master in the game. A lot of the same things that we talk about for Doom, and most of the time if you just lock Echo and you don't really know what you're doing, you're going to do a lot of nothing. The ult charge is fairly slow. You need to know your combos. You need to know how to go in without dying. A lot of things want to kill you. You have to float correctly. You have to ult correctly. A lot of your ults are going to get no value. I mean, there's a lot. I think that she's actually not great for the metal tiers of play. I think that you're going to get more free games and more free value out of a lot of other characters than Echo. Nothing on Echo feels free. Everything feels earned. Like, you have to earn every ounce of what you want on this character. And I think that it's not like you have to just put a little bit of practice into this character to get yourself off the ground. You have to put quite a bit of practice in this character to get yourself off the ground. And it's not as forgiving even as a character like Doom that has a higher health pool, and you have like something that you get a lot as tank in the lower tiers of play is that your supports will pocket you more when that's not really what they should be doing, but that's what they do, and you're not going to get that on Echo. Of course, if you have a Mercy Pocket, of course, Echo might be C, and pretty much any DPS with a Mercy Pocket is going to be better. But yeah, I'm putting Echo here. I think not really great for the meta ranks, unfortunately. Genji. Now, Genji is fantastic for the meta ranks. The reason that Genji is fantastic for the meta ranks is that he's a punisher of mistakes. He sees a mistake and he punishes it. Kind of similar to how Diva punishes mistakes. However, Genji has that momentum factor that just plays really well against teams that don't react fast. Like, Genji gets countered at high ranks of play mainly because players react to him. So they don't give him a great opportunity to go in. When he goes in, he has to be mechanically perfect in that moment because there's going to be a reaction by everyone. He's going to get shot. There's going to be abilities flying at him. There's a very, very quick reaction. With the slower reaction, Genji has more time to kill things. He doesn't have to kill things as fast. Now, it still requires you to master this character, of course, but I don't necessarily think you have to be very good at Genji to climb out of the metal ranks. All you have to do is be disciplined slightly when you go in. Don't go in without like confirming a kill. Try to make it so that if you ever do dash in, you already have your deflect. You have your deflect to keep you alive. You have an exit plan if things go wrong, and then you combine a style of poking and playing passive with a transition into a brawl when there's a key moment. I always say isolated person, low cooldowns, or someone that's low HP. These are like the three things or a combination of these things. If you do that already, I think you can climb out of the metal rank. Now, of course, it's going to take some practice and all that stuff, but unlike a Doom, right, and even an Echo, where I think you have to get to a pretty high skill level on these characters to climb out of the metal rank, I don't think that is true for Genji. So I'm actually putting Genji, sorry, that's Hogg. I'm actually putting Genji in the bottom of A tier. I think you could justify the top of B, but yeah, I just don't think that, like, you have to get so much better at these characters to climb out of the metal rank than you do at Genji. And also Genji has that X factor where if you do get decent at him, you can basically hard carry any game you're in, which is cool. Hanzo is strong. I think Hanzo is really, really strong. In the metal ranks, he's really strong. The only thing that's weak about Hanzo is that you don't often get the peel that you need when you need it. Like, if you get dove on by a tank or you dove on by a Genji, in high ranks, supports realize that they need to give you time to hit shots. They need to peel these players off you. But sometimes in low ranks, you're not going to get any peel, and you have to just hit a shot. So that could be kind of frustrating. And also, I know that people like to joke around about like, oh, RNG Hanzo, but while like getting RNG kills is cool, it's never enough to like carry a game. Like, you're not gonna carry and win a game just based on RNG. You have to actually aim, and the only way to actually unlock Hanzo's carry potential is to actually aim and hit shots intentionally. See a scoped in Ana from distance and actually hit that shot. It's not easy to learn the actual aim of Hanzo. It's easy to just like spam head level and get lucky every once in a while, sure, but that's not going to carry as hard as any of these other characters. Still, Hanzo can really deadlift, I think, if you just put a little bit of practice into him, and if you main him, I think he can carry a lot. I'm actually going to put him in the top of B tier. I think he's really good. Not quite as free value as like Genji, just dashing into the enemy team sometimes and following up on damage that is not being healed up and just getting a whole bunch of free value, but definitely a character that can carry if you put in some time into him. Speaking of which, let's talk about Junker Queen. Junker Queen is kind of really strong, like really strong. She's really good as like a Smurf character, I would say. I think that she's not the easiest character to learn, for sure, but especially if you play around cover, you look for the right moment to engage, you can do some crazy things on this character. Swinging in, getting combos off, your ultimate is amazing, one of the best ults in the game. Junker Queen's really cool, but the weakness of Junker Queen is the fact that you're fragile, right? You're kind of vulnerable. You're not really as tanky as the other tanks. And for that, I think that she deserves like a down rank. Unlike characters, like, I think that she's easier to get to the base value than a character like Doom, but not quite as free value as some of the characters in A. I think I'm gonna put her in the top of B. I think that's probably fair. Junkrat. Now, before his nerf, I would have probably gave Junkrat, or I believe I did give Junkrat higher. I think he was good before, but the problem with Junkrat is he has some maps that he kind of sucks in. He does have some maps that he sucks in. He's not as free value as before. His combos aren't as easy to get off. Now, Tyre is amazing. Tyre is one of the easiest ults to get value out of at the low ranks of play, and it's going to carry the most amount of fights. So just based on Tyre alone, that's amazing. I do think that he's not going to be great on every map. And that's kind of his crux, is I think if you play him on the maps he's good in, as long as it's not like a long-range sniper map, he's fine. But yeah, I'm gonna put him in the A tier still. I'm gonna put him in low A, but I think before he was probably closer to S. Kiriko. Similar to a lot of these characters, I think that there's like kind of like a perception problem where a lot of Metal Ring players think that Brig is like this weak anomaly and like and Kiriko is like busted, right? But the reality of it is, unless you're utilizing what Kiriko can do, doing these aggressive flanks, opening up the battlefield by playing an off angle, looking for specific aggressive teleports on your DPS that are off angling themselves, you're not reaching what this character can do. If you're just heal botting on this character, most of the time you're not gonna have as hard of an impact as a character like Ana, who's being more proactive with her abilities instead of reactive. So I think that like Kiriko is far weaker in the metal ranks most of the time than Brig, but I think that people's perceptions of her are higher. I'm actually gonna put Kiriko down in the C tier. I don't think that Kiriko is that good for the metal ranks, unfortunately. I know some people might not agree with me here, but yeah, just being a character that has, like, Kiriko has the potential to be both proactive and reactive, but most of the time in the metal ranks, even I've coached players all the way up into masters that are way too reactive on this character. And that's really where you're limiting yourself. And especially in the metal ranks, if you just play only reactive, then you're putting yourself on the whim of your team too much. You're not going to be able to carry enough. And I'm going to put her in the C tier. I think that that's fair. Speaking of which, let's talk about Lucio. Lucio is kind of a character that is freed up in the lower ranks. I think he's a bit better in the lower ranks than he is in the higher ranks, but he's still not great. You can go in with your team, you can try to speed them in. They're not going to go and speed in. Most of the time, you're going to want to try to do something yourself. And his, like, aggressive play style is kind of viable in the metal ranks and then doesn't become that viable later on. I still think that he doesn't get as much value as some of these other supports, but I think it's better than these. I'm going to put him here. I could see the justification that he deserves higher up, but yeah, I'm going to put him right here. And I think that that's kind of fair, although you're not going to be able to really get the best use out of him unless you're in a duo or trio stack. May's great. May's really, really strong. Blizzard is amazing. You don't even need to hit icicles, just wall off tanks. I think Mei's really, really good. Underplayed as well. Mei can give you a ton of value and shut down some of the best tanks in the game that are really gonna hard carry. I'm actually putting Mei like here. I'm actually putting Mei above Genji. I think that this is probably fair, actually. Let's do it like that. I think this is fair. Genji requires a bit more skill to get yourself off the ground compared to these characters, but I do think that he can probably carry more in the lower ranks of play. Like, he can definitely completely carry a game, but these characters bring so much free intrinsic value to the table. I think it's crazy to underestimate them. Mercy. Mercy's a weird one, because Mercy is a character that I always call her like the 51%er, where if you're playing amazing, you have a 51% win rate, and if you're playing bad, you have like a 45% win rate. So, of course, you're gonna climb if you keep playing well on her, but playing her solo is so hard because there's some characters that you could enable really well, right? Ashe, you could enable really well. Cassidy, you could enable really well, but you don't enable tanks really well. You don't enable characters like Mei very well. You don't enable characters like DPS, like Reaper very well, Sombra very well, Sojourn, Torb. None of these characters you enable very well. So you're going to be very situational on the composition. So if you're playing Mercy in a duo or trio that you can rely on the other DPS to play something that works with Mercy, that you can enable better, then I think that Mercy could be even A tier, right? But if you're solo queuing on Mercy, I think that Mercy is like C. It's really like not the best character to play in the metal ranks if you want to climb. Now, granted, you will get a lot of reses off, and I do think that you can get a lot of value that way, and you can kind of warp a lobby around a DPS. But yeah, like I said, it's just a little too situational. Kind of what I talked about with Lucio. I'm gonna put Mercy kind of. This is hard. This is hard. I think, like I said, if you had a duo, I'm gonna put Mercy. I think I put Mercy here, and I'm gonna move Bap here. Yeah, I'm gonna move Bap like that. I think that this is kind of middle of the pack. I do think that if you don't have a duo, you're playing Mercy solo queue, I would put her even lower. But if you have a duo queue, like a good one, I would put her higher. One that utilizes characters that Mercy is actually good with, right? Pharah, Sojourn, Soldier, Ashe, pretty much most hit scans, not Tracer. So yeah. Moira. Moira was already S tier before. She just got a new buff where now she can fade out of coalescence. This character's crazy. It's so strong. You're basically the best DPS in the metal ranks. The lower rank you are, the better and better you are as a DPS. You're really hard to kill, especially if you incorporate proper movement. Crouch spamming left, right straying is going to make it so there's a lot of characters that have a hard time shooting you. Against Hanzos, make sure you're stagger stepping, which is like being unpredictable. Right, left, right, left, right. You're being very unpredictable, so it's hard for them to like kind of line it up unless they're really close to you. And you're not underestimating just like fighting somebody and someone that's doing a slow amount of damage to you. If you just heal orb like the roof and you just keep yourself healed, deal damage to them while you crouch spam, like most players are not going to be able to hit the crits required to kill you. On top of that, making aggressive plays with like orb plus coal, you can freaking fade an on-a-nade, which is completely busted by the way, but you could fade an on-a-nade and just kill her outright, just get kills in the back line. This character's crazy strong. The lower in rank you are, the less it matters about having powerful utility, and the more and more just being able to kill people and make aggressive plays matter. I'm putting more in the top of S tier. I don't really think it's that close, to be honest. I don't think it's close at all. Erisa. I think that a lot of players fall into the trap with Erisa, where they kind of just exist and play Erisa to just shut down the enemy tank, and that's fine, but your carry is kind of limited. But on the plus side, one of the things that you get value out of playing Erisa in the metal tier is players shoot you way too much. They focus you way too much. As long as you play a piece of cover and cycle your cooldowns around the piece of cover, you're never gonna die. Like, you're just not gonna die, and just you're gonna exist, and you're gonna take every cooldown in the game, and it's gonna be freaking nuts. I think that besides that, as long as you make sure to track cooldowns with your ultimate, you can get a lot of value. This character is kind of more simple to climb with than characters like Junker Queen and Diva, and I think she's also fairly powerful just because of how people play around her. No one really plays to counter her. I'm actually gonna put her here. I think that she's good. I think that she deserves this place. And yeah, I think that's fair. Now, once again, we're in the Pharah tier. Pharah, I'm going to put Pharah right next to Mercy because it's the same thing. With the Mercy Pocket duo, high. Without one, low. It's just kind of obvious. This character can completely take over a game, but you need a mercy pocket. And then just realize that oftentimes when they have hit skins on the battlefield, your goal is to play passive enough until you see an opportunity to go and be aggressive and get the hit skin off the battlefield, and then you can just do whatever you want because no one can kill you anymore. Ramattra was S tier on my regular tier list. Ramatra's S tier in metal ranks. Ramattra, especially when you like nano Ramattra, it's just so strong. Like the ult is just way too powerful. Players are not going to be able to counter it properly. 20 seconds is way too freaking long. This character is busted beyond belief. I'm putting Ramattra up here. It's just so strong in the meta ranks. It's just insane. I'm putting Ramattra here. Reaper is powerful. Reaper is really good. I think a lot of players play Reaper poorly, but in the metal ranks you can get away with not playing Reaper all that great. Now don't just think that because you're Reaper that means you're supposed to shoot a tank all the time. Most of the time you're still wanting to duel squishies. You're still wanting to kill squishies. You're not necessarily trying to just shoot a tank, especially a tank that is being double pocketed. You're not necessarily going to be able to kill that tank, and you could die to other things while that's happening. But Death Blossom is like way better than Blade in the low ranks of play. It's going to be a great ultimate the majority of the time. I think this character also has, I mean, the character has more health, a get out ability. Like there's a lot of things to this character that I think is really good. I'm putting Reaper up here. Reinhardt, Ryan kind of warps the game around him. He's really strong, swinging in, pinning in. You're not going to get punished nearly as much as you used to. Especially like with the sleep change, you're not going to get slept and then just kind of sat there and then the enemy Ryan's going to pin you. Like that's going to take too long to set up and it's not going to happen that often. Ryan is kind of just like a game warper, and I know that he got nerfed, but he's still amazing. I'm putting him in the S tier. He's just too strong. Sigma is kind of similar to characters like Junker Queen and Diva, where he's super strong, but he's hard to play. He's hard to master. Most of the time, you're trying to poke resources, track cooldowns, hit rocks, poke out DPS. Like, there's a lot of things to bounce on this character. He can certainly carry, though. And a lot of times, if you're hard carrying on Sigma, you just, like, push past the enemy team. Like, you can just keep pushing up on DPS that don't respect you and just kill and kill and kill, and it's crazy. And I think he's the best at doing that, but still, it's going to be hard for you to learn everything that you need to learn on him. I'm putting him here. I think I'm going to move Lucio down here. I'm sorry, these three supports, but yeah, it's not great for these three supports, I don't think. Let's talk about Sojourn. Sojourn's not great. Not great in the metal ranks of play. I think that you get more value out of characters like Cass and Ashe if you don't have the skill to hit crits with your railgun. Doesn't mean it's not worth grinding. This is one of the best DPS in the meta right now, looking to be one of the best DPS for a long time, but not the most reliable of DPS right now. Still, even if you never hit crits, I think this character is going to be more value on average than like most characters without a pocket. But I'm putting Sojourn like here. I think that a little bit less than Hanzo, but definitely around the same amount of value reliably. Now let's talk about Soldier 76, a character that is really good. He's going to have a hard time getting like the peaks of value, but one of the benefits that you get from this character is that you just don't need as much resources. You don't need heals. You can go on aggressive flanks. You can play at a really nasty off angle. And you have heal station for yourself. I'm putting him up here. I don't think he can get as much value as Ashe, but he needs less resources, and that's kind of invaluable in the low tiers of play. So yeah. Now, with that logic, though, I would probably put Hogg high, right? But really, Hogg is a bit underpowered, and you don't get rewarded for the risk you take on this character right now. You just don't get rewarded for hitting hooks. You don't get rewarded for being like this big glob that like takes people's attention. You just don't get rewarded nearly as much. Now, if you're smurfing or something like that, sure, you could dominate on this character, but there's way too many things that can mess up your hook when you set it up. There's way too many things that can shut you down. Ana is one of the most played supports in the low rank, so you're gonna have to face Anas all the time, and you're not gonna get reliable Suzu. So yeah, even though I think he's a bit easier to get value than some of these characters, I think his limit is much lower. I'm gonna put him in the B tier. I don't exactly know perfectly where he's supposed to go, but somewhere around here I think is fine. Sombra is not gonna be a great middle rank tier character. You can definitely like shut down Widows, especially if the Widows get no peel. And you can hack ball, and that's okay. There's no guarantee though you'll have focus fire from your team with hacking a ball. I just think that this character is not really putting the game, like, you have to learn mastery on this character to really carry, and it's really hard. I think it's really hard to get your team to reliably utilize what you're doing. There's no focus fire, there's no coordination. You could ping things and hack things and nothing's gonna happen. Your EMPs oftentimes are just going to be completely overlooked. Most of the time, you're going to have to get all the value yourself, and I think Tracer's better at doing that, and even Tracer's hard to play in the metal ranks. I'm going to put Sombra, unfortunately, I'm putting Sombra in the D tier. I just don't think that Sombra is that great to climb out of the metal ranks. Now, you could certainly do it with mastery. Of course, you could do that with any character, but as far as getting you out of the metal ranks for free, Sombra's not the character to do it at all. Now, speaking of getting you out of the metal ranks for free, we have Sim. And Sim will get you out of the metal ranks for free. Sim has one of the highest win ranks in low ranked play. Really strong, really freaking powerful. I think that's not as easy as necessarily cast or straightforward as cast. There's still a amount of skill expression with this character, but turrets get you a lot of value. Being able to teleport and turret bomb is really strong. Putting defensive turrets on choke points is really strong as well. I'm putting Sim up in the A tier, only eclipsed by Torb, which I think Torb actually this is a lie. Torb goes up in S tier. Torb is great. Higher health pool, a lot of free value, like automatic value, no aim required. His ult is kind of mediocre, but everything else about this character is really great. I'm putting Torb in the top of S tier. I think that he's really strong. The only downside to him is that he has a big freaking hitbox. That's the only downside to him, but still. Tracer can definitely carry you out of any rank, but she's not easy. She's hard. Now, I don't think that she gets, like, even if you're not great with her, she still gets more value than, like, Doom, Echo, Sombra, but until you get to a certain skill, like, I don't think you have to get very good at Genji to hard carry some games, because you can just get, you'll just see a lot of people that are weak on the battlefield, just stash them, get free value that way. Your ultimate is easier to use, or more powerful than, like, Pulse Bomb, which requires skill to use. So there's a lot working against you there, but you know, if you learn and power through all these things, I think you can definitely climb. So I'm putting her here. I know this might be a little bit of a controversial place, but I'm putting her here because she's like the fairest character, right? Like, nothing's free on Tracer. Everything is earned on this character. She has the capability to carry, but she also has the capability to go in and die instantly over and over again, right? So everyone who's played Tracer knows what I'm talking about. It's a hard road to get good at Tracer. You have to master so many different things. Nothing's given to you. You don't need perfect reaction to like do well in a game, but as you climb through the metal ranks, the better and better you have to become. Like directly linear. So yeah, I'm putting Tracer here. I don't think that anything is free for her, and there's also a lot of characters that are popular in the lower tiers of play that are hard for you to deal with and annoying to deal with, you know. Characters like Torb, characters like Moria, characters like Sim. You know, these characters, you can definitely play around them as you get better, but it's not free. Now let's talk about Widow. Widow's kind of the same thing as like a lot of the other characters like Doom, you know, all these supports, but mainly like Doom and Echo. I'm putting Widow at the top of C. Like a lot of these characters where, you know, you need a certain skill threshold to get value out of this character. Now, I think on the sniper maps, you don't even really need to hit crits to carry on this character. But yeah, there's definitely like a limiting factor on this character. Learning to play around a lot of your counters, learning to play around a lot of these matchups, like the Ashe matchup. Unless you're hitting crits, you're disadvantaged, right? And so I'm putting her here. I think that that's a fair placement for her. But, you know, just like kind of with Tracer, you earn the skill, you get the skill, you can hard carry, but until then, pretty low. Winstone. Winstone is kind of like, you know, some of these other tanks in this category. I'm actually going to move him down because I'm putting Winstone here, I think. Yeah, putting Winstone here. He needs a lot of resources. He's going to be a much harder wrecking ball to climb out of the metal ranks with. especially because he's better when you have divers going with you and people utilizing the space you're creating with your bubble. And you just don't need as much of that. You just need people in your line of sight when you're playing Wrecking Ball. He's also a bit greedy for resources like consistent healing, which is nice in the lower ranks of play. People tend to pump your they tend to pump the Winston more, pump the tank more. But I do think he's just gonna be like harder than Wrecking Ball most of the time to climb with. Speaking of Wrecking Ball, I'm putting Wrecking Ball in the bottom of S. While I do think that Wrecking Ball does require a bit of skill to play, you know, like he does require understanding the timing of your team, making sure to not slam too far ahead of your team, slam in the LOS, and then the combos with him. There's like infinite skill variations with him, things to learn. I think that the fact that he just doesn't really need resources, he can kind of heal himself and just roll around the map and just like never die, is very, very good. And I'm putting him up here kind of because he's very independent. Doesn't really need much of anything to be effective. Zarya is like so dominant in the meta ranks of play if you're good. You just get high charge, you get perma pocketed by your supports, which is kind of exactly what you want. You walk in and you beam people down, which is great. The only downside to this character is she's not the easiest to learn, I don't think. You need to learn bubble timing, you need to learn how to properly manage your bubbles, and you need to make sure that your positioning is good. Plus, you have to have good tracking. But I do think that she gets more free value than a lot of these characters down here. I'm actually going to put her up here. I think that's a fair place for her in the middle tiers of play. I think you could justify going higher with her, but I think that's about fair. Zenyatta. Zenyatta is the last character on the list, the last support on the list. And it's kind of unfortunate that I'm putting so many supports low down this list. Except for Ana at the top and then Moria at the top. It's because like a lot of these supports, it's hard to carry with them. I think it's pretty hard to carry with them. And Zenyatta is definitely a character that can, right? But you have to go flanking pretty aggressively. Not necessarily flanking, but you have to be off angling aggressively. You have to be mechanically good. You have to discard the proper targets. You're vulnerable, so people are going to come after you. I think that Zenyatta is really, really good for climbing, but he also gets the most flame. Unfortunately, you're gonna get flamed by your team a lot, and sometimes the easiest path to victory is just to be a support that can both burst heal and do damage. I'm gonna put him, I think we put him here. I think this is probably fair. The B tier is kind of way too stacked up. Maybe I move Sigma up here, and then it kind of looks a little bit balanced. Lifeweaver, it's too early to tell where Lifeweaver will be placed. I'm not entirely sure where Lifeweaver deserves to be. Lifeweaver needs a lot of changes, and I know that Lifeweaver is getting buffs. The hitbox is way too freaking big. We're getting a control chain, so there's a lot of things. I think Lifeweaver definitely could carry, but it's hard to play. Don't have a lot of burst heals. I don't know. I'm kind of erring on the side of like B, low B, maybe high C. We'll see. But anyways, this is the tier list that I have for season 4 for the metal tiers of play, based on the characters that are going to give you out of the metal ranks as quick as possible with the easiest as possible time, not necessarily needing the most amount of skill. You can just climb out. And this is not talking about the objective power level of these characters. Let's talk about the easiness to climb out of the metal ranks of play. If you agree or disagree, definitely let me know in the comments down below. Let me know what character you've been maining this season and what character climbed you out of the metal rank if you did. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the content. Smash the like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.